Hey everyone, I'm just going to go through how to do progress invoicing on Java using the new progress invoicing feature. Um, I have done another video how to do that with recurring jobs, which is my preference, only because there wasn't progress invoicing in the past, like before 2024. And I just like to have a little bit more control over the way that my invoices look. But I had a few people ask me how to set this up, so I'm going to go through it and show you guys how it works. It is pretty simple, but just sometimes it's easier to see. So this is a test account with test names, test addresses. None of these people are real. I'm not exposing anyone's information. If there is an Aretha Francis that lives at this address, I am very, very sorry. So I've got an approved quote here for Aretha for $10,000. And I've just put some, just some filler information in here. So this is the quote that I sent her. It's for an installation. I'm not really saying what it is here, but let's use our imaginations. I've put an anticipated start date of March 22nd. If approval received prior to March 1st, this just added a little bit of pressure to our fake customer, just so that we can get the ball rolling on this bigger project. I requested a $5,000 deposit, and I've just set this as an approved quote. I've added a text-only line item here, approval and invoicing, and I've called this 50%, or I've said 50% deposit is due upon quote approval, 25% will be due upon completion of phase 1, and 25% will be due upon job completion. So I have this approved here. I'm going to convert it to a job. Now, originally, when you would set up an install as a one-off job, you were only able to create one invoice when the job was closed. So what the progress invoicing feature does essentially is allows you to break down the total price into multiple invoices without setting up a recurring job or creating manual invoices. So I'm just going to set this as a one-off job. I said that it would start March 22nd, so we'll plan that. Let's say it's a, week-long job. Oops, let's go. Not even in March. That's a Saturday, so let's say the 24th. And we're going to change our end date to the 31st. Now, you may run into this issue, so I'm going to include it in this video. We want this to repeat daily, but most businesses do not work over weekends. So let's say weekly and custom schedule. And we want this every 1 week on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So now the summary reads weekly on weekdays. So now from March 24th to March 31st, we're going to have a job set, a visit set for whoever your crew is. And I'm just going to assign this to me. Now we're going to leave this remind me to invoice when I close the job. Job forms, obviously it's a demo account. Now that this is being turned into a job, this approval and invoicing line item isn't really necessary to have within the job. You can keep it there, but it would take it off prior to sending invoices, or you could leave it if you'd like that breakdown. The only thing is that these will send over to QuickBooks as a line item. So if you're really picky about your reporting, I would take this out. It can be added up into the line items here. So if we wanted to, we could take this out. And this line item here is going to show up on future invoices. Now, changing stuff in here, it doesn't change anything on the original quote. The original quote is still going to look exactly the same. This is just the job where the work is getting done. So I am going to hit save. Okay, so one more thing about the progress invoicing. If you haven't seen this show up in your Jobber account, you're going to need to go into your settings, go to Jobber Labs, and this is usually where new products and services kind of get like a trial run. So I'm going to hit turn on, and that will add this feature. This little pop-up comes up just because it is a beta testing program, just to acknowledge that it might disappear at any time, and functionality of the feature may change as it improves, and it is experimental feature, so don't complain about it essentially. Or, feedback I'm sure is welcome, but there may be some issues. It's not going to be perfect while it's being built out. Okay, so now if I go back to my jobs, I've got Aretha's job back here. This is the $10,000 job. We have taken a deposit for this job. Now what we're going to do, we're going to go to more actions on the job and generate invoice. And when this opens now, you're going to see this progress invoicing option here where you can bill the entire job or the portion of the job. So I'm going to choose portion and next step. Now you can do a percentage or an amount. So if I took a 50% deposit, I'm going to do an invoice for 50%, create invoice. Now, when it comes to progress invoicing, I find these much easier to track if you change the title to something like progress invoice 1 of 3 or project invoice 1 of 3. If there are several properties or several projects on the go, I would include a project name. So this could be 145 canals, call it that. And because she has paid a deposit, I'll click this add deposit button. And we're going to select the unassociated deposit. So now our invoice is at a 0 balance. Another way that we could have done this, I guess, is put this through after phase 1 and just had 75% billed. I just like to keep these as clean as possible. I want an invoice for the 5,000. I want an invoice for 2,500 and then a third invoice for 2,500. So I'm going to, typically I would save and send as email. This is not a legit client. So for right now, I'm just going to hit save invoice. Now, in order to mark this as paid, I'm going to have to mark it as sent. And I will also have to close this invoice. So if you have ever had a customer complain that they keep past due notifications, the reason for that is just that it's showing as a waiting payment, even though the total is 0. And the only time you're going to see this is if you have created an invoice for the exact amount of the deposit. So I'm going to go out to more actions, close invoice, and we want to do without recording a payment. We don't need to record a payment. They've already made their payment as a deposit. So I'm going to close this invoice and it's going to change that awaiting response to paid. So now if we go back to Aretha, or we could have clicked through to the job from that invoice, we're going to go on here again. Click more actions, generate invoice again. Again, portion of the job. Now it's saying on invoice we have $5,000. Since we're doing percentages, that's 25%. So this is after phase one, second invoice. We're going to create invoice. Now I'm going to call this one progress invoice 2 of 3. Or you could call it phase 1 invoice, I guess. Save and send us email. So now we're going to have to wait for a payment to come in on this one. However, I'm just going to mark this one as paid and put it to other, say it was paid today, just so that we can finish off this entire process here. So we're just going to go and generate that last invoice. Or another way that we could do this be to close the job. Normally, you wouldn't get this message unless some of the visits weren't completed. Obviously, I didn't complete any of them. So we could remove them. If you don't want to remove them, you can go in, mark these complete. If you know they were done, you can delete some that were not. This menu will pop up. You can choose to close the job. If it is done, you can schedule a new visit or leave it as action required. If the job's done, obviously, we're going to select close job. Now it's showing up as requires invoicing. I'm going to click the generate invoice button. Again, portion of the job. We're going to do that last 25%. And we could call this progress invoice 3 of 3, or you could call it the final invoice. And we would save and send that, or we could save and collect payment. Now, when we go to this job 124, you can see the billing detail here. So the job subtotal is 10,000. We've invoiced 10,000 or 100%. And below we have access to those 3 invoices. So there's invoice 1, 2, and 3. I just like titling them in that subject to make sure that it is clear what we've covered. If you look at invoices on the client profile, it gets a little mucky if you have more than one property. So you can see the billing history here in this little window. But ideally, I would come over to the invoices to see what's been invoiced and what's been paid. Or you can also pull a statement for client lifetime, or if it is a busier account, you can pick a start time. So if you're doing this monthly, you could say that you wanted to start this January 1st, 2025, or maybe it's February 1st, 2025. Just if you send these things out monthly, then obviously you're not going to go back too far. You can download and look at it yourself, or you can email it to the client. And those are just some of the ways that you check and see what has been paid and received. Obviously, this is a little hard to read, but it is a way that you can see what was put through on a job. If you need any help with training, or you just want kind of a one-on-one walkthrough, I do offer training support. Please feel free to reach out to me by email at hello@janinechambers.com, or you can reach out to me through my website. There are booking links, or you can book a free introductory call.